Hello and welcome to the Papers with Jim. Today is Saturday, the 25th of June 2022. We're going to take a slightly different approach today because we're going to look at the ownership structure, the businesses who own the newspapers and their circulation and a bit of how much money they make. And we're going to group them together based on who owns them. So today we'll start by looking at Reach PLC, formerly Trinity Mirror. And Reach owns the Mirror, the Express, and the Star. And their circulation's roughly just 327,000 for the Mirror. In brackets, these are the Sunday papers versions. So the Mirror on Sunday, the Sunday Express. Reach PLC owns 3 newspapers. These are the newspapers that they own. Let's just see what they're reporting on today. So the Mirror is traditionally a kind of working class newspaper. It's read more widely in the working class. It traditionally aligns itself with the labour movement and working class people. And so there's no surprises really that the Mirror have gone for an attack on Boris Johnson. Now, just because I happen to hate Boris Johnson myself doesn't mean that I'm just going to let the Mirror get away with poor quality reporting. So we can see here that for the most part, what they're trying to get across is just how badly Boris is doing. Even his own party don't like him. This is off the back of 2 by-election defeats, so they're humiliating. I suppose they are humiliating, but you're just adding words that don't need to be there. A cabinet minister resigns in disgust. So was it in disgust? Possibly, probably. I mean, I probably would if I'd be disgusted. I am disgusted. The nation is disgusted, but maybe slightly putting words in their mouth. And the next Tory leader says that the nation would be better off if the Prime Minister quit. Well, if they're referring to who I think they're referring to, the former chairman in the 90s, I saw that interview, and I don't think he literally said they would be better off, but it was very heavily implied. So I'm not even sure that's pretty much true. We couldn't agree more. Go now. So that's the Mirror, owned, remember, by Reach PLC, as is the Daily Express. So the Express has a slightly smaller circulation than the Mirror. And we can see on the right, and I have placed them deliberately on the left and the right, the Daily Express, the crusading Express, has gone for the absolute opposite of what the Mirror has gone for. So they've gone the complete other way. Boris vows to fight the next general election and win. So he vows to win, which is all that matters really, because he's Boris Johnson. So if he vows to do it, well, does he? He doesn't actually normally do it, does he? Same picture, so saving money for the company. Might as well use the same picture, just this one's slightly more cropped. They've gone with the full page thing here. Even though they hate him, they just want a massive picture of him. So you couldn't get more opposite than that. Two papers owned by the same company, just covering all their bases really. Go now, and then but he does intend to fight and win the next general election. So that's Reach PLC for you, which made over 600 million pounds in revenue. I don't know what year that was. It's probably 2021 or maybe 2019. It could be a few years ago. It's just what was on Wikipedia. Don't forget the Star. Like I say, sometimes the Star's all right. It's kind of silly, and they have gone a bit silly today. I mean, last week they were the only paper of the lot that had anything actually interesting to say. So, I mean, I'm not even going to... Let's move on to the next one. Next is Rupert Murdoch. Everyone's heard of Rupert Murdoch. Rupert Murdoch owns News Corp. Well, owns some of it. He's the chairman on it or something. Rupert Murdoch's one of the richest men in the world, worth over $20 billion. His wealth is valued at. News Corp has a corporation, made over $9 billion in revenue. News Corp is the kind of the parent company, which owns Fox in the US as well. But in the UK, it owns News UK, which prints the Times and the Sun. So two quite different papers here. The Times is like 250 years old. It's one of the oldest newspapers in Britain. It's the paper of the establishment. It's considered a paper of what is it? Not, I can't remember the terminology, but you know, a proper paper. And the Sun is there's a picture of it there. So the Times and the Sun. But these are the Saturday papers as well, I have to add. So there's a lot of shit on them. All this stuff, extra stuff. I mean, imagine, so the Times 350, sort of a third of a million, just over a third of a million in circulation. The Sun, over a million, 1.2 million people read the Sun. And yet there's no news in it, really. I mean, let's just see what it would look like. So in both of these, and yes, they're the Saturday, let's just see what, if we got rid of all the stupid stuff that isn't news. So that's not news. James May talking about someone he used to work with. That's not news. This is what's inside. So that's not news. This picture is, it's an important, I suppose you could call it photojournalism, but actually it is a picture. So it's not actual news in it. So by the time you get down to anything, there's just this small area here with any news in it, and it's the PM faces new Tory threat by the Times. And if we do the same thing to the Sun, if we just get rid of anything on here that's not news, then there you go. So next up, we've got the Viscounts Rothermere, the Harmsworth family. Mentioned this the other day. So this is the family that owns it. The main guy now, Jonathan Harmsworth, the fourth Viscount of Rothermere, is inherited the company when he was about 30. He is a British aristocrat. They are an aristocratic family, recognised as aristocrat, whatever that means, superior bloodline, whatever. So he is an aristocrat in real Britain, in the real world, in real life, 2022. This man is an aristocrat with non-dom status for tax purposes. British aristocrat from a British aristocratic family, but non-dom. Maybe there's some dispute over that, to be fair. I don't want to get done for libel. So John is, when he was about 30, inherited this sort of the trust or the group. When I was 10, my nan set up a building society account for me with 100 quid in it, which is the same kind of thing. Inherited wealth. You know, when people say, people these days, they don't want to work hard, do they? They just expect everything to be handed to them on a plate. Back in my day, we had to work for things, to work hard and save, and that's how you got ahead. Well, that's literally the opposite of what happened to him, because he inherited a newspaper company. So the Viscounts Rothermere own the Daily Mail Group Trust, which made over $1 billion in revenue, whenever that was in the last couple of years. It was for a year. And then that in turn, the trust owns DMG Media, which is the kind of these are all these different levels of companies. And then DMG Media owns the Daily Mail, Metro, and the Eye, which is an interesting portfolio of companies to own. And Daily Mail, just under 1 million in circulation. Metro over 1 million. That's the one that you get free on the train. The Eye, quite low numbers, 145,000. So let's take a look at what we've got today in the papers for the Daily Mail and for the Eye. So looking at the Daily Mail first, which remember is the newspaper of the year, seems to be going mainly with the fact that if you buy the Daily Mail for £1.20, you can get a free drink at Cafe Nero. You can choose from hot coffees, cold frappes, and more. So basically what they're saying is, but I looked this up, by the way, so if you go to Cafe Nero, you're looking at about £3.50 for something like this. Probably more. Which means if you buy the Daily Mail, you can get this for a third of the price. That's the main thing they're going with. The fact that their paper is, they're not even presenting it as news anymore. It's a form of currency. If you take this in, you get a free drink at Cafe Nero. So I'm slightly dubious about these numbers here because the circulation of 920,000, I don't know if this takes into account the fact that a lot of people are getting this just to get other shit. They're not really buying it and reading it. It's a circulation of 920,000. It claims to be one of the most widely read papers in the Daily Mail. And yet, ironically, it's probably the least read paper because people, they'll buy it for this kind of shit. They might look at the front page. Maybe they'll open it and carry on reading when they're told to turn to page 2. And then they'll go and check the horoscopes and the weather. Maybe have a look at the pictures. And then they'll take it to Cafe Nero and exchange it for a coffee. So that's what that does. And then you've got the Eye, a little bit more expensive. Just like same company owns it, but this is more expensive than this by 10 pence. That's not a coincidence, is it? It's deliberate. So the Eye, generally, all right. Like I say, it's kind of a summary of the other papers and other, not just the papers in the UK, but other news sources around the world. It's good if you haven't got much time. This is worrying. Abortion banned in the US. This is referring to the fact that, is it Wade versus Roe? The US, it was in the US Constitution, and that has been it's been changed, which isn't quite. Abortion hasn't been banned in the US. I mean, it's definitely going to be worse. It's going to be harder to get an abortion. But I understand it to be that the state now decides rather than the federal government. But that's not quite like abortion being banned in the US. It's sort of quite a misleading headline, even though I do think it is troubling. I'm not trying to diminish what the news here, but that is a little bit sensationalist, isn't it? I mean, I suppose, okay, to be fair to the Daily, let's see what they have actually written in terms of their actual news. Apparent Lib-Labour alliance deals Boris double election blow. So Javid is saying, tell the public about the truth about the anti-Tory pact. There's an anti-Tory pact. It's Labour and Liberal. It's Labour's fault and the Liberal Democrats' fault that the Tories have lost seats in the by-election because they've got an anti-Tory pact. I just want to let Savage Javid know, and the rest of the Tories and anyone else who's listening, anyone who isn't a Tory and hasn't voted for Tory, they are in an anti-Tory pact. So it's the rest of the country. We're all in an anti-Tory pact together. You're not part of it because you're a Tory. So we oppose you holding positions of power. So that's what the Rothermere, the Viscounts, it's what they that's what the shit they're peddling today. So next up, we're moving on to the Daily Telegraph. The Daily Telegraph, owned by the Barclay brothers, who is now just Fred because the other one died last year, I think. So it's just Fred Barclay. Their worth is estimated to be around about 7 billion. So that puts them, quite a bit behind Rupert Murdoch, who was on 21 billion, one of the richest men in the world. But the Barclay brothers are on a mere 7 billion. So not worthy of note, is it really? They own Press Holdings, which is registered in Jersey. We all know why it's registered in Jersey, don't we? And then the Press Holdings owns a Telegraph Media Group, which made 271 million in revenue. The most recent figures they have, and that owns the Telegraph, the Daily Telegraph, and the Sunday Telegraph, which has a circulation of 317,000 people. And the Daily Telegraph today going with, well, I mean, what are they going with? That, to be fair, this is the one that passes the test the best so far. If you get rid of the stuff that isn't really news, this is just saying what's inside. So we can block that out. We blocked the picture because we blocked the other one, just to be fair. This is the one with the most amount of news on the front page, although, to be fair, it is a broadsheet, so it is literally twice the size of the other front pages. So there is, again, news to the extent that it affects them, because it is just the Tory paper. So that's just, they're talking about Tory rebels plot to move to unseat their Prime Minister. So that's the Daily Telegraph. And then the last few papers we have, The Guardian. The Guardian is owned by the Scott Trust, which is valued at over £1 billion. That owns the Guardian Media Group, which owns The Guardian and The Observer, the sort of Sunday paper, even though the editorial staff aren't all, exactly the same across those two papers. There are some differences. Now, The Guardian, with a readership of 105,000. The Guardian is quite popular. It's a known sort of institution, I suppose, isn't it? But no fuckers reading it. And a few more people read The Observer on a Sunday. But I think that's the lowest circulation number out of all the papers we've looked at. Which explains why every time you go on their website, they're literally begging you for money. So again, if we just block out the shit that isn't news. Okay, and again, because it's a picture, I recognise, yes, that is photojournalism. It does count, but I blocked it out on one, so I'm going to have to do it on all of them. Summer book special. So, Tory grandees tell Johnson after historic feat, just go. So they're basically going along the same lines as the Mirror here. Telling the Prime Minister to go. Okay, and then finally moving on to the Financial Times. There's not too much to say about this. It's owned by Nikkei Inc., a Japanese company, not criticised or sort of known to be pro-business. It's kind of the mouthpiece of Japanese business. Owns the Financial Times. It's only owned them for a few years, but currently does. Has a circulation of just over 100,000. So a bit more than The Guardian, but, miles behind the other tabloids. The FT is quite focused on the Roe vs. Wade. Summer books. I think that's the third or fourth paper that's talking about summer books. Books to read in the summer. Because the weather's different. And so the type of book you would read would be different. And then, so Roe vs. Wade, Johnson under fresh crisis, big old ad for for whiskey, invest in whiskey. So that's, it's the FT. There's never really much to say about that one. So there we go. That's the papers and who owns them with Jim. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.